Welcome to the April 4th meeting of the Rotary Club of Louisville. I'm president of the club, Kevin Lynch, and it's a pretty exciting one here with Teddy Abrams and Grant Parker, so we're looking forward to that. And please silence your phones. Join me for a moment of silence in memory of longtime Rotarian Clyde K. Warner, who died at the age of 100. February 15th, he was died peacefully at his home, surrounded by his family. The funeral service is going to be this Saturday, and then at Calvary Episcopal Church. The burial and a reception to follow is going to be at the same place. Visitation will be 4 to 7 p.m. on Friday, April 5th, that's tomorrow, at Pearson's in 149 Breckenridge Lane. I'm sure you've all been there many times. Providing invocation today is Julie Schmidt, Senior Director of External Affairs at KET, Paul Harris Fellow +1, and one of the best darn presidents we've ever had.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Rotarians and guests. This is a special day to have the remarkable Teddy Abrams as our featured speaker. Please join me in prayer. Dear God, thank you for the gift of music, a universal language. It gives us peace, joy, hope, and understanding. Music brings people together of all backgrounds, breaking down barriers and uniting us. We are grateful for our amazing arts community and for the Louisville Orchestra that, while honoring its significant past, continues to inspire us through their unique and imaginative new works, innovation, and collaborative spirit. We ask you to bless those that are blessed and share their love of music, talents, and passion so freely. Amen.
Now, to lead us in the pledge and forward test today is Tom Crimmins, a member of the 1912 Society, Paul Harris Fellow +4. But interestingly enough, he's chair of the District Rotary Friendship Exchange Committee. And if you look at the table over on the right, there's some friendship folks coming here from Wisconsin. So welcome to them. Good, Tom.
Thank you, Kevin. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty, justice. I had the opportunity to attend a DEI committee meeting for our club right before this, and we had a lively discussion that involved incorporating the four-way test into an activity that we're promoting. So as we say this, let's remember not just words to repeat, something to really guide our actions and work. So please join me in the four-way test. Truth, fair to all concerned, build goodwill and better friends, and official to all concerned.
Okay. Now it's time to introduce your guests. And go to the mic over there.
Rotarians, I am so pleased to have Mary Michael Corbett back in the house. As you all know, she's a long-serving Rotarian, and many of us are working on her to rejoin, but we are delighted to have her as a guest.
Mary Ellen Harned, and it is my pleasure to introduce quite a few guests. First of all, Tracy Morrison. Please rise. Tracy has a long career with Norton Healthcare, and she just told me her current assignment is outboarding the West Louisville Hospital, which is something we're all anticipating. She will be a key player in that role. And her husband, David Morrison. And David was with Yum Brands for many years and retired as Director of Benefits and Compensation and does consulting. Oh, and Tracy still is an executive coach, too. You need to know that as well. And Louise Harris, who is our neighbor and friend. Stand up, please. And she is a former superb celloist with the Louisville Orchestra. And her husband, Jay Harris, was director of the Ballard Student Band, and so he's also a musician, so we're happy to have them as our guests.
Rick Harned, continuing the work on this table. But this is a special guest that we have. It's not a friendship exchange, President Kennedy.
Close enough.
But it's from the International Travel and Hosting Fellowship of Rotary, Rotarians that we met over 11 years ago in Portugal, as a matter of fact, where we have visited back and forth several times since and become strong friends. There's John and Jean Henderson. John joined Rotary back when it was a young men's club. He's celebrating 54 years as a Rotarian.
Hello, President Kevin. I'm Alice Bridges with Parks Alliance of Louisville. My special guest is Stuart Unger. Stuart is the Executive Director of the Louisville Sustainability Council, and we've done some work together through Alberta O. Jones Park. LSC is the premier sustainability organization in the region, providing effective leadership, community engagement, and education towards sustainable, equitable, and resilient communities. We can all use more of that.
President Kevin, my name is Roland Blahnik. My guest today is Marie Blahnik, who is my spouse of 42 years.
He got kicked out of the room.
President, my name is Maura Payne from Kentucky College of Art and Design. My guests today are Kevin Wilson, who's in charge of special projects at the President's Office and oversees all of our communications for the college, and Alice Alt, our VP of Advancement. Thanks very much. Thank you.
President Kevin, I'd like to introduce my wife, Karen Chatham, as my guest.
Good morning, I'm Melissa Cobb with Sonorama Downtown, and I'm grateful to have a very special guest of Ashley Derringer of I Would Rather Be Reading Non-for-Profit. Thank you for joining us today.
President Kevin, fellow Rotarians, I'm Alan Singleton. I'm with CGB Agri-Financial Services. We provide agricultural people across the country, pretty much coast to coast, with mortgages, leases, and financial products. My guest this morning is Erica Gallion, our General Counsel.
President Kevin and fellow Rotarians, I'm Lori Flannery with New Directions, and my special guest today is the board chair of New Directions and a Louisville real estate professional, Zach Wedding.
And my guest is Martha Hedinger, Senior Product Management at Johnson Controls. Welcome again. And guests, keep in mind, after the luncheon, I'd recommend you go over to the corner table over there, and Craig Sherman will help you understand a little more about what Rotary is all about. We'd love to share that. And by the way, just a note, here's Craig. There you go, Craig. Just a note, we have an unusual number of guests today, and I think I know the reason for that. It's called Teddy and Graham. What a combination. We're looking forward to this. Our Rotarian in the spotlight this week is Dr. Swanee Jett. He was chosen by Louisville Business First as one of the 5 on the rise for his work as CEO of Park Duval Community Health Center. The nonprofit medical health center delivers preventative and primary health, medical and dental care services, and other services throughout 7 sites. Congratulations to Swanee. And I want to remind everybody to keep inviting guests. You know, we want to have more Rotarians. We do great things here. We have great speakers, and we want more people to know about that. Our Social Activities Committee is planning an international group travel opportunity for members and needs feedback on where you'd like to go. Please click the link on Sparks to answer a few questions on if you're interested. If you're not interested, that's fine. But if you are, we'd like to know which is your preference. And I hope you have marked your calendars. A lot of events going on, upcoming. Tomorrow, April 5th, is Caravan Day with the Kentucky Humane Society at Louisville Central Community Center. We need a couple of volunteers from 9 to 11 in the morning to help with the pet food giveaway. You can also sign up for a date with a dog. that day at the main campus. A weekly reading program, with the 8th graders at West End School begins next Thursday, April 8th. See Walt Kuno for more information. That's not the right date, but it says next Thursday, April 8th, whatever that is. We need volunteers to help spruce up our Louisville Knot sign and surrounding area on Saturday, April 13th. And see Greg Braun for details on that. He's the one that started that whole program. We partnered once again with Canopy, where's Ben, and YPEL for a business synergy mixture on April 16th. We did this last year. It's hosted by Republic Bank's Steve Traeger and Logan Pichelle at the newly renovated Plaza headquarters downtown. And on April 23rd, I think it's a pretty special one also, we have a tour of GE Appliances and all their new equipment and processes of the revamped Building 2 and Building 3 where they do dishwashers. Sign up for that. Talk to Kent Euler if you want more details on that. Of course, Sparks as well. You can find more details and registration links for all of these in Sparks. At this time, I'd like to invite to the podium to induct a new member, President-elect Lori Hudson Flannery, CEO of New Directions Housing Corporation, Vice Chair of the Rotary Fund Board, and Chair of the Governance Advisory Committee, and Paul Harris Fellow.
Thank you, President Kevin. Fellow Rotarians, it is the duty of our Rotary Club to add new members so that we may increase not only our usefulness and influence as a club, but also to extend the spirit of Rotary throughout our community. Today, it is my honor to formally reinstate and welcome Robert Chatham back as a member of our club. Thank you, Robert. So I'm going to give you this pen now, but then I'm going to ask you to stand in front of your peers and talk a little bit about the induction, and then I will induct you, and then I will ask you to continue standing until I finish introducing you. And then when I say back to you, President Kevin, you can take your seat back again, okay? These are the rules.
I'm untrainable, you know that.
I've been told. That's why, no, I'm kidding. Okay, so Robert, you have been elected to membership in this club because we believe you to be a worthy representative of your calling and to possess qualities that will permit you to exemplify in your public, business, social, and private life the true spirit of Rotary. You have been admitted not only to the Rotary Club of Louisville, but to a worldwide organization of more than 46,000 clubs. And by virtue of your membership in this club, you will be welcomed into the fellowship of any Rotary club in the world. And this is where, if you've seen me do this before, you know that I remind all of us that we are the 14th largest club in the world out of all those 46,000. So I say give ourselves a hand for that. Rotary membership adds value to those who engage, whether by attending meetings and events, participating in service projects, or sharing your knowledge and talents as we carry out the principles of Rotary into the community. So Robert, accepting this pin, I now formally induct you as a member of the Rotary Club of Louisville. Accept, I assume.
Of course.
All right. Okay. So this is the introduction part. Robert Chatham is a professional engineer and owner of Chatham Energy Consulting, LLC. He has over 30 years' experience in the power industry. He was instrumental in growing a $4 billion domestic and international energy business, including $200 million in renewables. He has a working knowledge of domestic and international power plants and electric distribution systems, with specific experience in conducting due diligence on power purchase agreements, siting, licensing, engineering, procurement, construction, and interconnect tie-in. He also has experience in all phases of U.S. power plant financing, with a focus on getting projects developed and constructed by identifying project feasibility and developer-investor risk. Robert is the past president, 2021-2022, for the Rotary Club of San Rafael and assistant district governor for District 5150 for the years 2023 and 2024. From 2013 to 2017, Robert was a member of our club here in Louisville, serving as vice chair for both the projects and international service committees. Robert is happily married to Karen Chatham, who is with us here today, and thank you for joining us. We welcome you, Robert, as a member of the Rotary Club to Louisville, and back to President Kevin.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It's great to have Robert back. I know a lot of you have been longer-term members. I remember him here as a former Louisville Rotarian, and he's been a phenomenal Rotarian in Louisville and in California, and now back to Louisville. So we really welcome you back, Robert. It's exciting. Great. And I want at this time to invite to the podium Paula Harshaw to introduce our speaker. She's a member of the 1912 Society and a major donor. I want to mention first, though, that Paula, my wife and I have been going to this thing called the Pops, Pop series in Louisville with the Louisville Orchestra. We've been going, I think, since it started. I mean, it's many years we've been going now. And that wouldn't be happening but for Frank and Paula, who sponsor that series. And it's really, in fact, this Saturday night they have a mariachi band along with the orchestra. So if any of you don't go to that, check it out. It's really a phenomenal series, and thanks for doing that, Paula. And also, just a quick one on Teddy, too. I'll just do a quick one on Teddy. Just a quick one on Teddy, too. Teddy's been there 10 years. She'll do the introduction, okay? But I want to mention what a fantastic human being is. Number one, I think he started college at age 13. I'm not sure if that's correct, I think that's true, which is pretty amazing. I couldn't have found out college at age 13. But he said he's had such an impact in the community. He goes everywhere. He used to have to go to Whitney Hall to listen to this guy, to listen to our orchestra. Wonderful orchestra. But until he came, he went to see the orchestra, and he had to go to Whitney Hall, he paid for the tickets and go to Whitney Hall. Now he goes everywhere in the community. People can't afford necessarily go to the tickets, get the tickets, or wouldn't otherwise go. Music is spreading around our community. The good news is also it's going to be spreading around the state pretty soon. They'll talk more about that. I just want to mention what a wonderful human being that Teddy is, and I want to welcome Graham with his phenomenal background as well. Appreciate it.
Well, he told me I had 4 minutes, and he took 30 seconds. So I'm going for it. Well, today you're going to experience the Louisville Orchestra. Since 1937, the Louisville Orchestra has been the mainstay of the arts, and it began with a very innovative program and was known for its international acclaim. But by 2011, maybe the time of the Troubles, both the National Public Radio and the New York Times highlighted articles about our financial stability. But today, I am going to tell you the Louisville Orchestra, your Louisville Orchestra, is viable, energetic, influential, and much admired. The pride of Louisville. So just to highlight a few accomplishments, 2024, winning the Grammy. 2023, and there's more, keep it up. 23 and 24 began the first ever state tour. 23 collaborated with the National Parks and Yo-Yo Ma, playing Teddy's original composition in Mammoth Cave. 2022, Teddy's named Conductor of the Year. And in 2020, we were invited to Carnegie Hall for the last COVID. But in 2017, our first album in a while reached the #1 on the Billboard Traditional Classics. But in 2025, we expect to be on the Broadway stage with Teddy's composition, the musical Muhammad Ali. So how do you successfully lead an orchestra into the 21st century? How do you serve your current patrons now and in the future? Well, it takes leadership. So it takes leadership and continuous innovation, the capacity to translate the vision into reality. And fortunately, we have the dynamic duo of Graham and Teddy. So Graham, as our Chief Executive Officer, may be a new name and face for some of you. This Peabody Award-winning executive with over 20 years of leadership has had an unrivaled resume in the terms of success. He came to Louisville from Decca Records, where he oversaw the largest classical music media company in the U.S., dominating the market share. But Graham had a strong bond to the Louisville Orchestra and to Teddy before his arrival here as Chief Executive Officer. In his role of president of Decca Records, he signed Teddy and the Louisville Orchestra to 2 albums, the first in many, many years. And the first one actually was, again, number 1 on the Billboard for classical music. So he's produced, and then The Order of the Nature with our own James. He's born in England, just in case you don't recognize his accent. He arrived in 1995, and this is an interesting tidbit. He is an ordained interfaith minister, the real type, not the internet, which I think explains why he's such a nice. But now Teddy, I don't know that we need to do introduction because he needs to get up here and speak. But when he was appointed, just a reminder, when he was appointed in 2014 at the age of 27, he became the youngest director of a large metropolitan orchestra in the country. Now, we knew he would break the mode of the traditional conductor based on his past experience. But in reflection, the board probably should have asked if he could drive a car, because Teddy took it literally to the streets. Teddy, on his bicycle and his keyboard, embedded himself into the community. He traveled all over Louisville, and he embraced all types of music. He became the maestro of the people. He's been a galvanizing force behind the orchestra's artistic renewal, a versatile musician, an acclaimed conductor, remember, Conductor of the Year, composer, remember, he's gotten 2 awards with Dave and whatever, and the Grammy. So what else can I say but to let him speak? But I do want to tell you as a PS, he now has a driver's license and he has a car.
Well, thank you so much, Paula. That was a great introduction. And oh yeah, I've known Paula and Frank since I got here, and it's really wonderful to be back at this Rotary Club. The last time I was here was in the Galt House, the top floor. So it's been a little while. And a lot has happened since then at the Louisville Orchestra. I'm really, really pleased to be in the position that we're in right now, which is a moment of reflection, actually. It's been 10 years since I came to Louisville for the 2014-15 season. It's gone by very quickly, but I think as Paula hinted at, I came here at a time of real challenge for the orchestra. And I usually don't remind people of that because we like to just start the storytelling and start the kind of inspiration from the period when things started going really well for the organization. But we also have to be honest with our history too. I think it's very important to reflect on past challenges, past mistakes, and to learn from them. And the orchestra has the most fascinating history. As many of you know, but probably not all of you, this orchestra was founded coming out of the 1937 flood, but really found its footing a few years later when it became the most significant arts organization in the world for commissioning new art. Certainly new music, but I'd like to say new art. There was a groundbreaking program in the 1940s and 50s, spearheaded by the music director at the time, Robert Whitney, and Mayor Farnsley, who decided to turn the Louisville Orchestra, which was a fledgling community orchestra, into an organization that commissioned music constantly, commissioned new music from living composers. That was unheard of in Louisville, Kentucky. It was unheard of anywhere. Even the Boston Symphony, the New York Philharmonic, they weren't doing anything remotely on this scale. And so with this big vision, the Rockefeller Foundation handed the Louisville Orchestra an insanely large gift. I would say an irresponsibly large gift, because there was no proof that the Louisville Orchestra could do anything that they were promising. But, which is, I think, in our DNA, they did. Not only did they do what they said they'd do to the Rockefeller Foundation, they over-delivered. 180 albums worth of new music that this city commissioned. I'm telling you, this was at a time when I think there was a season the Louisville Orchestra commissioned something like 38 pieces of new music. The Boston Symphony, which was the next most prolific commissioner of music, commissioned 7 in that same season. Just put that in perspective. That's our legacy of doing the things that people say are not going to be possible, of going above and beyond the promises, of actually working through the big challenges that confront us. If the Louisville Orchestra emerged out of a flood and emerged out of a situation where, I mean, they were paying the musicians like 10 cents a day back then, and then became so famous for this mission of creation that they were invited not only to Carnegie Hall, which was a huge sensation, but to also play at the White House their new music that they'd been commissioning. It was a really incredible story. As you know, that story went up and down. There were periods of renewed challenge. There were periods of renewed success. There were some incredible music directors that came here and inspired our city. There were moments when it wasn't quite working. And I came out of a moment that was really tough for this organization. And I was tasked with doing whatever it takes to make the orchestra work. There were really no rules and parameters except for the extremely small budget that we had. That was a pretty serious parameter. It was minuscule. I mean, like we were counting the toilet paper rolls, and seriously, it was like that for a while. But one thing that I think we did right is that we didn't tell people about our problems. We told people about our vision. We told people about what we imagined the most exciting, interesting orchestra would be. And I went around and just said the Louisville Orchestra was already the most creative orchestra in the country. Honestly, we weren't at that point. But this is Louisville, Kentucky. This is the city of Muhammad Ali. And I knew one thing about Muhammad Ali, that he went around telling everybody that he was the greatest long before he was, and he manifested it. And I thought, well, if it worked for Muhammad Ali, it might just work for us. So I'm half joking, but I'm also not, because we really did just tell people that we were going to be the most creative orchestra that reached everybody in Louisville, long before we reached everybody in Louisville. But then, piece by piece, things started happening. I think maybe first became apparent that this was possible when we had the opportunity to play for Thunder. That was in 2016. And already some good things had been happening. The orchestra had been growing. We'd started an American festival that got a lot of attention. There had been a great article about us in the Wall Street Journal. But when we managed to play the soundtrack for Thunder, and I realized there were 700,000 people listening to the orchestra live, and maybe 1 million other people on TV, I thought, wait a minute, this vision for being an orchestra that reaches everyone in the community, it's not a joke. We can do this. We're going to have to think differently. We're going to have to play in different places. We're going to have to make our music available to all. We're going to have to be uncomfortable. Arts organizations don't like that at all. Arts organizations like to be comfortable. Artists sometimes like to be comfortable, but we would have to change that. And slowly but surely, those parameters all changed, and we started reaching more and more people. And that's what got us to this day. And a huge part of that happened a few years ago. Coming out of the pandemic, well, depending on how you time out the pandemic, but I would say going into the pandemic, we had a lot of really big ideas. Some of our craziest ideas, like taking the orchestra to the entire state in an effort to break down the urban-rural divide. Like maybe doing a recording that might win a Grammy. Like starting a program that involved hiring 3 full-time composers to be the only orchestra in the world that had such a thing. Those were our ideas, and suddenly the pandemic hits. We decided that that was the moment to advance our biggest vision yet. Not to slow down and take stock and be careful, but actually to zoom forward. We didn't have a very large staff. I think we had like 12 people working for the orchestra going into the pandemic. There were a lot of challenges, but we decided that that was what we wanted to do. This was our moment. Not to be scared, not to play it safe, but to say that history's given us an opportunity. And that's when this person to my right that you've just heard about walked into the Louisville Orchestra and helped us actually accomplish our vision, because a lot of our ideas were just that. They were really good ideas, I'd like to say, because they've been crafted over years of thinking and meditation and collaboration. But it took somebody to come and actually bring these things together from the staff side. And he's not on stage, sometimes to introduce the contest, but he's not on stage making the music, but none of the things that were listed by Paula would have been possible. There would be no Grammy, there would be no album with Yuja Wong, greatest pianist alive, there'd be no Mammoth Cave, there would not be a Kentucky tour without Graham Parker. So I wanted to just tee this up, and I would love for Graham to tell you a little bit about his own path to come to Louisville and why you've chosen this place, because Graham could be anywhere right now. I really mean that. Graham could be at any orchestra, any arts organization, but he chose to be at the Louisville Orchestra. So I'd love for you to just to hear a little from him. So I know you already did introductions, but Graham Parker, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Paula, for that very generous introduction. Thank you. Before I actually address Teddy's question, I just want to give you my Rotary credibility, because I think I have some. Both my parents are Paul Harris Fellows. My father was the treasurer for Rotary International Great Britain and Ireland. He was district governor and Rotary president twice. My mother was in a wheel and a district governor and a district chairman. So I have been to... And I was just texting with my mom right before, because she's like, your father would be so proud. And I was like, well, you never invited me to speak at your Rotary Club, so... And she said, well, you were never around. Classic mother. Anyway, well, here I am. It is great to be here. Thank you. Very flattering for Teddy to say what he said. The reason I'm here, I'm going to go in a slightly different order, is because of Teddy. It's very simple. I met Teddy in 2016. It was literally the day that it was announced that I was leaving running. I used to run WQXR, which is the largest classical radio station in the country. It's in New York City. I had run that for 6 years, and I was recruited by Universal Music Group to run all of their classical business in the United States. And the day the press release dropped, it was quite a day. I had to let my staff know at QXR I was leaving, and there was a lot of press attention, all this kind of stuff, and a very good mutual friend of ours called me up and said, hey man, do you need a drink? And I was like, yes. And he said, have you met Teddy? And I was like, I know the name, we haven't met yet, don't know why. We've talked about him at the radio, don't know why he hasn't come down yet. He goes, well, he's in town, why don't you come meet us for a drink? So I met Teddy for a drink in New York, and I started to understand what you had all started to understand for 2 years before that. And because I was thinking about what my vision was for the company I was about to run, and I was thinking I was going to start a label, and I ended up doing it, that was going to promote and sign really exciting American musicians. I felt that was missing in the marketplace, that there wasn't an actual label dedicated to American artists doing really interesting things. And when I started hearing about what Teddy was doing in Louisville, and the Louisville Louisville Orchestra and himself, I was completely smitten. And he had me come down a few months later. I heard the orchestra live, and I sent them a contract shortly afterwards and signed the orchestra. And then I ended up signing Teddy to a deal directly as well. And we had a lot of fun, and I got to know him extremely well. And during the pandemic, we became quite close, just talking about how, with obviously the social unrest and his musical reaction to that and what he was writing, it was just fascinating. And I started to come to Louisville more and more and was just blown away by the city, to be really honest. I started to understand, obviously, all the fun things here. I brought my kids down and my husband, and we went to the races, and we stayed at 21C and played with the cool thing about the elevator, and that was our that was our Christmas card that year. That was great. But I just started to really, and I met so many interesting people, so many interesting people. And when it came time, I left Universal Music Group, and I decided I was going to be a consultant. I think Teddy waited about 3 minutes after the news broke that I was leaving UMG, and he called me up, and he first was like, "How you doing?" I was like, "I'm good, how are you?" He goes, "What are you doing now?" And he asked if I would come as a consultant and start helping out the orchestra. And then about 4 months later, he said, "You can't leave, you have to stay." So here I am. So it really is it's about this guy as a colleague and a friend, but also as a visionary. This relationship between an artistic head and an administrative head or business head or strategic head is vital in the arts. Now, some people combine it, but it's pretty traditional for it to be two different people. But if you look at some of the great orchestras in the United States, the Chicago Symphony, the relationship between, in their heyday, of Henry Fogel and Sir George Solti, Michael Tilson Thomas and Peter Pastryk or Brent Assink, there are Deborah Border and Gustavo Dudamel. These relationships are the ways that I can be inspired by Teddy and what his vision is for the orchestra and what we can do in Louisville and Kentucky, and I can help try and bring that to life and focus it, raise money for it, get the staff motivated towards it, hopefully get the community motivated towards it. And so I can't do it without him, and I think he said he maybe can't do it without me, but he tried that for years, and it's a pretty exciting relationship. And what I've been very inspired by from being in Louisville now for a couple of years is really understanding, and I think this is where again Teddy is absolutely unique in his thinking as a musician, not just as the music director of this orchestra, but as an artist, that the arts must play a role in civic transformation. It must. It cannot sit on the side. It cannot wait for someone else to do it. It has to be part of the transformation of this city. And that is incredibly inspiring, certainly to me personally, but it's the right thing. It's the right thing for the arts to do. It's the role we have to play. And then when Teddy dropped, "Oh, let's go tour Kentucky," it's like, okay, let's do that too. And then, but you bring that same idea of, it's an easy fridge magnet phrase, let's bring community together. But no, if you actually show up in small towns where an orchestra hasn't been ever, or in 40 years, and you see the looks on an 8-year-old, 9-year-old face, or a 12-year-old trombonist who's just starting to get good at his instrument, or a grandparent that's never had the chance to bring their grandkids to an orchestra, that's the difference. That's the difference. And that's the way that the arts plays a unique and distinctive role. So it is very exciting to do this work. And I don't think it could happen in too many other cities apart from Louisville. There is something in the water here. I know that's a controversial topic, but anyway, there is something in the water here that makes, and I think it does go back to the founding, as Teddy said, that DNA lock. In 1937, a flood happens, thousands of people are homeless without jobs, there's human loss of life, business interruption. What does the civic leadership choose to do? Start an orchestra, because they knew that the recovery of the city was the arts was going to drive it. And I think that has remained central to us today.
Yeah. So what time is it? Yeah. you can see why we brought Graham here, right? And that's, one of the challenges for a city of our size, an orchestra of our size, is to achieve a really significant, capacious vision that maybe has to fit within some of the more restricting parameters that you wouldn't get in markets like New York or San Francisco, Los Angeles. How do we do that? How do we do that responsibly so that the orchestra lives on forever? But how do we do that in a way so that the work that's happening here is genuinely as interesting, if not more creative, than anywhere else in the world? That's a really hard thing. That seems like an alchemical reaction that just doesn't balance unless you've got some magic. But I think that magical thinking is what's needed right now. It's needed right now both for the industry, the classical music or the arts industry at large, but also for our communities. There's a sense perhaps, and maybe Louisville's a good example of this, where it feels like we often suffer one loss after another. A business leaves. There's a sense of budget shortfall. Something happens at a major beloved institution. A favorite maybe figure in town departs. Whatever it is, there's sometimes this sense that things are challenging and there isn't the glimmer of hope that we all need to give us that inspiration as a community. And to Graham's point, which is something we talk about all the time, who is going to solve that problem? You can't be any one hero that stands up. You can't ask one person to do it, not even at the very top politically. It's actually us. We had this moment in the pandemic and then coming out of it where we looked at the challenges around us, the prolonged racial tensions, the issues with feeling like our downtown maybe wasn't what it needed to be, the sense that there was kind of a cultural collapse in our city. And instead of waiting around for somebody else to fix it, that somebody else had to be us. The orchestra had to step up and do its part. There is a thin line between doing whatever it takes to make the world a better place and delusions of grandeur. I will say, I always qualify this every time. But that's the line you're supposed to be on, because that's the side of things where big dreams are actually possible and people say, go and do that. I think when we went to the state legislature with an outrageous, huge plan to help us all accomplish our shared goals of bridging the urban-rural divide, something that has been pernicious, that has been kind of a challenge that is exceeding some of our biggest ideas for solving it. We had this big vision, this big idea, and an expensive one too, I will admit. But we went there because we thought that the vision is the thing that we should put on the table. And if it fails or if it's not something possible at this moment, still, we did our part answering that call to civic service. In Kentucky and Louisville are places where people actually want a vision like that to happen, as we found out time and time again. And that is the reason why I've stayed. I think it's the reason why Graham's here, and I think it's why there's been international recognition for the orchestra right now, because the legislature said right then that this is worth this investment because music and culture can do this work of literally bridging divides. I know this sounds like a little bit of a political stump speech at this moment, but it is. But it really is, because I want the orchestra to matter. I don't want to be a relic, just a museum piece. I don't want classical music or orchestral music or whatever it might be to be something of the past that we've just kept around for the prestige of the city, so that people can rattle off the institutions. Oh, we're lucky to have a theater, an orchestra, an opera, a ballet. Just a list of things that people never attend. That's not good enough. It's not good enough for Louisville. It's not good enough for America. It's not good enough for this century. We have to do more and matter to people on an everyday basis. So that's the reason we're putting ourselves out there. And I get really impassioned about it because I see it being possible here for once, not just like every other place where it floats along and is kept alive. That's no way to live. And so I think we actually have the chance of doing it because I'm starting to see the evidence of that. So anyway, I also want to give a huge shout out, because they're not here right now, but our musicians, my God, these musicians are not only playing their butts off every time they make music, but they are jumping into this big vision of going to Harlan and Prestonsburg and Bowling Green and Paducah and Mammoth Cave or whatever. It doesn't matter where. 54 degrees in the cave, and they're playing with all the passion that you could ask for from a musician. Our musicians are the best of the best right now. And they are worth seeing. If you haven't seen them play live, like the quality, the virtuosity, it astounds me. And I'm so proud of them. And often they don't get to speak like this in front of all of you, but we've got 60 full-time musicians that have chosen also, like Graham and like me, to make Louisville their home. And they're doing that for the reasons that I've just described. And I'm so proud of them. And I think you all, as we are, should be too. So anyway, I think...
We have a Q&A, right?
Oh yeah, we have a Q&A. Yeah. Do we hit our time? How do we do?
Oh, okay.
We're good.
Do we do okay on time?
Great, yeah.
We always have to watch the time.
We'll be up here for Q&A, so come on up.
Oh yes, if anybody has any questions.
Phenomenal, very inspirational. We're lucky to have you guys, I tell you.
Hi, Ann Monell, longtime fan. This is so exciting. But I'm, as a mother of children who are going into the arts, I'm always concerned about that next generation. I was just wondering if you could speak to how you see the orchestra as playing a role in preparing the next generation, but also perhaps some people who might not have been exposed to orchestral music to really try to encourage more diversity in the arts.
That's a fantastic question. Thank you. We have really reinvested and doubled down and refocused our efforts to bring music into communities that have historically been left behind, and that's not okay anymore. We have got to address that. So we have made huge strides in the West End of Louisville. We bring the orchestra the full orchestra multiple times a year free to California. We're looking to expand again next year as well. That is one pillar of our commitment. We also do a program called Once Upon an Orchestra, which is in every single Jefferson County Public Library, that we bring music and story time together, and the Library Foundation and the library themselves have told us these are the biggest circulation days, the biggest attendance days ever at the library when the orchestra shows up. We are starting a pre-K program as well for the youngest kids in our community. We've expanded our family series, and we're even thinking about making those free moving forward, because we believe that equity and equal access is the most important thing we can possibly be doing. And also the Making Music program, which maybe many of you in this room were part of when you were JCPS students. That know Henry Heiser, one of our biggest supporters of that program, is at the back, and Henry himself talks about how important that program was to him personally as he made a life in business and music and philanthropy. This year, for the first time, every single JCPS school participated in the program. Every single one. So 9,000 students came to Whitney Hall during that week of Making Music. So we are deeply committed, and I actually had a meeting right before I came down here with my Director of Community Partnerships, and we are brainstorming big new ideas for next year, so stay tuned.
Good. Keep that. You're going to answer the questions too, so keep on.
Hi, I'm Tracy Halvaday. A quick softball question, I think. Is there a difference between a symphony and an orchestra, and if so, what?
That's a good question, and frankly, I think a lot of people wonder that, and they don't know whom to ask. So you come to the right person. There is no difference between a symphony, an orchestra, and a philharmonic, or a philharmonia, or whatever people want to call themselves. The only thing is that a symphony can also be a piece of music, and an orchestra is obviously only the ensemble. But a symphony can either be the ensemble, or it can be a person's symphony, like Beethoven's Symphony No. 9. But there is no difference whatsoever. Yeah.
Okay. You touched on this, Graham. Feeder system. Many organizations, businesses, arts organizations are finding it hard to find high-quality people, players, musicians. We happen to be at the University Club. There is a School of Music here. So a specific part of that question would be, what's the interconnection there? And then the larger question is, do you find it difficult to find high-quality musicians?
It's a great question. So we have a wonderful relationship with the University of Louisville on many levels, and it's actually grown significantly. In fact, I was just conducting the University Orchestra a couple days ago. Was it yesterday? Whatever it was, the tornado day, because they shut down the campus in the middle. We also have our program with our full-time composers that are at the university all the time, working with their composition department. However, the system for choosing members of an orchestra is rigorously defined because orchestras are unionized. They're part of the American Federation of Musicians, the AFM, which is a strong union that rightfully has created a system that promotes fair auditions. When we have a position that's open, and there are only the specific number of positions in the orchestra that are funded, that are chosen by the musicians alongside management and put into a contract. There is a specific number. There is one tubist and one harpist. There are 4 horns. There are 2 clarinets and a bass clarinet. Those are all laid out. It's not just, a few here and a few there. And every single person is full-time. They are full-time employees of the Louisville Orchestra with their benefits and everything. That's a big distinction between ours and other orchestras in other cities. We have to hold auditions that anybody can attend, and the auditions are completely blind. We put up a big screen, and we cannot see who is auditioning. We have no idea their background, their gender, their demographic, their age, and that's very important. It means that when we get to the final round, which is the only time we can remove the screen if we so choose, we have no idea who's going to be there. So when we're choosing between the final couple of people, we just want to see some things like maybe how they move or how they might lead from their instrument. Those were people chosen from a process that is as fair as possible. What it does mean is that it's hard then to create an actual direct feeder system like orchestras in Europe sometimes have. You don't have this relationship between a school and an orchestra because our musicians that win the jobs could come from anywhere in the entire world. And we've actually had a number of international candidates that have won the positions. So I think 4 people in the last 2 years have won positions from other countries. We have no idea who they were. We'd never heard of them, but they were the person that played the best that day. And so there's a really fascinating element of fairness. And both sadly and fortunately, depending on your perspective, there is no lack of young classical musicians wanting jobs in orchestras. We are not in the situation that other businesses are in where you really have a hard time hiring. We have so many people applying for our jobs that we have to screen the resumes and strongly recommend that many of them don't show up. We tell about half the applicants that it's very unlikely that you will win. You can come. If you do, we will listen to you, but we recommend that you don't. Because when we had 160 people apply for the tuba position, you want to sit there and listen to 160 tubas playing for 3 days straight? Trust me, the timpani auditions were one of the most maddening things. There were 80 timpanists, and those were the ones that showed up. We screened 70 of them out. Just ding dong ding, like really. Now, I will say this, Chris Choi, who won the audition, is maybe the best timpani player in the United States right now. And he is an artist. He is an artist. It was so worth it. Did not feel like it in the moment, but it was so worth it. Come to see Chris play the timpani. It will blow your mind. Like with every stroke of the timpani, I was jokingly belittling it before, it's the most important role in the orchestra. With every stroke, he locks in the rhythm of the entire group, like the drummer in a band, but so much subtler, because you can only play when the composer's instructed you. He is an artist. It was worth it. It was worth it.
Good to see you. Dan Maloney, director of the Louisville Zoo. Good to see you guys. I just want you to know, I appreciate your energy, your creativity, your audacity. And my wife and I saw the Mozart event a couple of weeks ago, and God, it was unbelievable. So one of the most frequent questions I get in the community is, when is the orchestra coming back to the zoo? Turns out these guys get that question as well, so I want to ask, when is it coming back to the zoo?
What you just witnessed was an ambush. Dan is fully aware that I have a meeting on my books to go to the zoo in a few weeks. Oh, Dan has made it very clear how much he would love to have the orchestra back for Orchestra, so we are. So yes, we are working on that. Stay tuned. Stay tuned.
Jeff Underhill. Teddy, a while back, you biked to the historic Starks building, vacant building, and you wanted a 30-minute tour of the property. 2 hours later, I enjoyed very much the exchange, and you said to me that you recruit to Louisville with one hand behind your back, but if the Starks building conversion happens to become an artist workplace community, you would be able to recruit with both hands. That's going to happen soon, and so I want to know one question. Are you still good on your commitment to play the grand opening of the new Starks Artist Lofts to an audience of Rotarians, including Graham's mother?
All right, let's talk. Let's talk. Very excited. Congratulations, Jeff, on that too. Yeah.
Tom Crimmins, I don't have an ambush like that. At the great risk of showing that I haven't been paying a whole lot of attention, I know that down the river in Owensboro, we have the National Bluegrass Hall of Fame. Have you ever collaborated with them, and have you considered doing that kind of thing? I know you do really creative approach to symphony orchestras, but talk about that.
We're working on that right now. Our hope is that Owensboro and the Hall of Fame will be a part of our next rung of our tours, because still, knock on wood, but it looks pretty good for the future, that the orchestra will continue its tour of every part of Kentucky. And so Owensboro is our very top priority because we want to be down there. It's an extremely musical community.
Yeah, and we also played recently with Michael Cleveland as well on the last tour, and that collaboration was pretty amazing, so yeah.
My name is John Bush. Thank you both for coming today.
One of our best darn presidents ever, by the way.
My question involves another school of music that is very close by, not the university, but over here at YPAS. And my older daughter was fortunate enough to be a vocal major / music theater performer over there. And so I was wondering, what is your all's relationship with YPAS? What do they do to help you all, and what do you all do to help them?
There are a variety of things that happen each year. It's a little more on a ad hoc basis where we try and build a relationship that supports the school. So, for instance, I went and did a visit and conducted a session of the YPAS Orchestra, and then they're all going to come to the Mahler 6 concert coming up that we're playing in 2.5 weeks. So it's things like that. A number of our musicians in the orchestra also teach there and coach the students, so they're there on a regular basis. But those are going to be not only the future members of the Louisville Orchestra, but the basis of the audiences of the future. Even if they chose not to go into music, they're going to be the people that make up the most important supporters of organizations. So it's so important that we have that relationship be very, very strong. But yes, and I actually, the orchestra, I promised I'd throw them a pizza party at the last. So this is a good reminder that I have to make good on that. I have a lot of things I need to do here that you guys are reminding me. Thank you, John.
Thank you for all done.
That was phenomenal, very inspirational. Before I ask the last question, I want to mention that as I walked in, I said to Teddy, you know, we expected to play Beethoven's Ninth. I was joking around. You know? Then I went a couple minutes later, come back, and there he is pulling up on the computer, on his laptop, Beethoven's Ninth. He goes, I think I can do it, but the keyboard isn't whatever, and also no pedals. So if you want to try it, Teddy, could you go with something, whether that's it or...
You want to hear a little bit of his dice?
If you could.
All right, I'll see what I can do.
Keep in mind, this is very much, you know, limited in terms of the equipment.
So as he's getting set up, talking of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, it would be remiss of me to not ambush you all with a reminder that on April 18th, we we are celebrating Teddy's 10th season at the Louisville Orchestra with a gala where he will be conducting Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. Downtown at Whitney Hall, there is a gala beforehand where we still have a few tables to sell and tickets to sell. The tickets are going extremely fast for the concert, but April 18th is a fantastic time to come and celebrate Teddy, thank Teddy for all he's done for the city, and to be in the audience for what will be a spectacular performance. Teddy.
And just briefly before he starts, so we can have some people have to leave. Next week's meeting of the Rotary Club here will be Gene McLean, president of the Press Box and publisher of the Press Box. Coming here, the Kentucky Derby has changed over the last 150 years. You may get a look at this year's possible Derby field as well. And also, guest, go there after the concert and meet with Craig Sherman. Go for it, Teddy.
And this could be play-out music. I know you've been here a very long time, so feel free to get up and either dance or walk out of the building. But this is going to be a ridiculous piano version of some of Beethoven's Ninth. There's no pedal, by the way, so I can't sustain any notes. This is just an experiment here. This is a little bit. I'm going to play you a bit of the first movement of the Ninth Symphony. This is not the Ode to Joy, by the way, in case you're wondering. This symphony is an hour and 15 minutes, by the way. So, just in case you're wondering, since you're still here, I thought you were going to leave long before. Okay, just in case you're wondering, in the first movement, that little tune that I was playing right now, this is the first movement. It takes another hour to get to the Ode to Joy, but it's hidden right there. That little tune I was playing. It's hidden right there in the winds they play. It's a little like Easter egg that Beethoven has put there, and it takes a while before you get to it. I'm just going to skip to it because I think that's what everybody imagines. And why did I choose this reduction by Franz Liszt, who was like the greatest pianist and no pedal? Okay, this is what happens in the fourth movement. It's a super famous start, right? You probably heard this. This is going to be very, very, very messy. I'm just trying to read this here, but it starts like this. And then it starts with the cellos and basses going. he does it so fast, and he plays a little bit of the first movement in the last movement, like it's a quote, like you're remembering something. Then a little bit of the second movement, which goes, and then a little bit of the third movement, so he's bringing back all the memories of the whole piece, which is very beautiful and slow, so I'm not going to play it. And then you get this little mysterious bit, which goes like this, and you're going to see why I'm doing this, and then you all can go. It's very mysterious. You don't really know what's going on in the music right now. And the cello and basses continue. And then you've been waiting almost an hour for this moment here, and you hear. And then finally. It is played just by the cellos and basses. Comes with the singers later on. So simple. And you know how this goes. I'll just play the next little bit. There's a final thing, I promise. But there's this bit where the bassoon comes in. That little counter melody that's played right there by the bassoon. Famously, Leonard Bernstein was conducting this in conducting class, which he went to the same school that I did. We went to the Curtis Institute of Music. And Fritz Reiner, the conducting teacher, said, "Close your score." And he said, "Sing the bassoon line." And Bernstein couldn't do it. And he got kicked out of class that day. He failed that day. However, he's the only student that ever got an A from Fritz Reiner. And of course, you know, he did pretty well for himself later on. All right, well, if you want to hear more, you're going to have to come to hear the Louisville Orchestra on the 18th. So thank you so much for having me. All right, thank you all.
Graham and Teddy, that was fantastic. Meeting's adjourned.